Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the online video series for the subject Advanced Communication Systems EC 404 under KT University. We had been discussing about wireless technologies in the previous video, and this video is in continuation to the previous video where we had discussed only four technologies, mainly the HSCSD, GPRS, Edge, and UWB. So in continuation to that, here in this video, we would be discussing about DECT, PTT, and mobile IP. DECT stands for Digital European Cordless Telecommunications. PTT stands for Push to Talk, and the final one is Mobile IP Internet Protocol. So let's have a quick recap of what we had covered in the previous video so that you get a continuity in following up with this video. The first one where we started was the 2G standard, which is GSM, Global System for Mobile, and we had discussed about this GSM architecture as well. From this GSM architecture, we had derived this high-speed circuit switch data technology, or this standard is a 2.5G standard, which is considered to be 4 times faster than the GSM, and because of this, the data rate of 57.6 kbps was achievable under this technology. And the main difference between GSM and HSC-SD, as we have seen, is in GSM, single slot is assigned for every user, whereas in HSC-SD, multiple time slots are allocated to a single user, and this technology is preferred for constant high data rates and less preferred for the varying data rates like internet browsing and browsing. So here, the figure shown here is architecture of HSCSD, which we had already discussed, the interface and the architecture. Basically, it follows the same as the GSM, as I told you. Just the software is a bit upgraded. That's all. And the next technology we discussed was the GPRS, General Packet Radio Service Architecture, where it is again derived from the GSM architecture, and this is also a 2.5G standard. And here it supports both voice and data. And to support data, we used packet switching through two more blocks. You can see SGSN and GGSN. And then the remaining stuff, that is the architecture, mobile station, base station subsystem, and the other two subsystems remain the same as GSM. The next, we also discussed about different GPRS interfaces like air interface, abyss interface, A interface, and different other interfaces to access data with the server. We have the GI interface. All these were discussed in the video thoroughly. So let's quickly move on to the next, which was Edge technology. This is just a recap of the previous so that you'll be able to follow up with the video in a pretty better way. So you have a 2.75G standard coming up between 2.5 and 3G. That the reason being, we aimed at 3G, but we landed up at 2.75G to have a continuity again. So here in 2.75G or Edge, again 3 bits could be transmitted at a time, and the modulation technique was changed from GMSK to 8PSK. The next technology we discussed is ultra wideband technology, which occupied a very wide bandwidth but very low spectral density. Due to this reason, there was less of interference happening in this technology, and a data rate of up to 100 megabits per second could be achieved within a 10-meter radius. Two types were discussed: direct sequence UWB and multiband OFDM UWB. The next technology we're going to cover, as I told you, is DECT, Digital European Codeless Telephone. So let's quickly begin with this new concept. Digital European Cordless Telephone, or in short, DECT or DECT. This is a universal cordless telephone standard developed by European Telecommunication Standards Institute, ETSI. DECT offers excellent quality of service for voice and data applications. The main function, and as a main function of DECT, is to provide local mobility to portable users in an in-building private branch exchange. When I say mobility, it means the user can move around, not to a greater length but over a short range. The mobile user can move around without disrupting the connection. And this technology provides low power radio access between portable parts and the fixed base station at a shorter range. This concept or this technology is all about the codeless telephones. I'm sure you might have at least you might have seen the pictures of codeless telephone where the handset is not fixed through a wire. It is wireless connection between the handset, that is the receiver, and the base. So DECT is configured around the OSI model, that is OSI Open Standard Interconnect model, where it follows that physical layer, network layer, MAC layer. So it follows that standard, OSI standard. And here in DECT, there's no registration required. What do you mean by no registration required? That is, using this technology, it can page up to, it can communicate, can help different users communicate. Maybe up to 6,000 subscribers can communicate without the need of knowing in which cell they reside. Unlike other standards like you have GSM and all that. So here in DEC, there's no need to know in which cell the other user belongs to or in which they reside, because it's a short range technology. And so it provides mobility, and and it also provides low power radio access between this portable part and the fixed base station. And it's a framework for high traffic density. Though it is for short range, it can support a good amount of traffic or data and excellent quality of service as well. Looking at the DECT architecture, as I told you, DECT follows this or it is according to the OSI standards, where we have the physical layer, MAC layer, and you have the network layer and the data link layer. So first, we shall discuss about the physical layer of DECT. DECT uses FDMA, TDMA, or TDD radio communication methods, that is frequency division multiple access, or time division multiple access, or time division duplexing technique. Within a TDMA time slot, around a dynamic selection of out of 10, 1 out of 10 carrier frequencies can be used. Okay, and the channel bandwidth for DECT is almost 1.5 times the channel data rate of data rate is around 1152 kbps, so 1.5 times that value, which will give us around 1.728 megahertz. So that is a channel bandwidth for DECT architecture. And then we'll look at the MAC layer or medium access control layer. The MAC layer consists of a paging channel and a control channel for the transfer of signal information. And it also supports handover. You know what is handover, right? We have covered it in module 5, which is nothing but when the mobile user is moving, so and it comes under another base station, as long as it is receiving a good signal from its previous base station, it's fine. But then when the signal strength starts decreasing, automatically, to avoid disconnection of the call, mobile user is handed over, the call is being handed over to the nearby base station where it is getting the strongest signal. So that is handover. So MAC layer is responsible for this handover of calls and a broadcast beacon service that enables all idle portable units to find the best fixed radio port to log to. That is, if there's an idle user, and idle user, what happens? So as I told you in the previous class, the base station will continuously transmit messages, and then whichever, if there's an idle user, then that idle user automatically locks on to that frequency and can access the network, that is make calls or receive calls over the network. So all that is happening at the MAC layer. Next you have the data link layer, which is responsible for providing reliable data links to the network layer, and it also divides the channels, that is logical and physical channels, into time slots for each user. So division of channels into time slots is done by the data link layer. Also, not just that, it provides formatting, that is frame formatting, error correction, protection, error control techniques are being employed in data link layer for each time slot. So data link layer has two main functions. One is to divide the channel into time slots. The second one is error correction and detection techniques. Last layer is a network layer. So network layer is referred to as a signaling layer of DECT and is based on the ISDN and GSM protocols. So this layer, or the network layer, it provides call control and circuit switched services. That is, the call control is being done by this layer, and also circuit switch services are being provided by this layer, and also mobility management. These three are the functions of network layer. Moving on to the frame structure of DECT. If you have to discuss about the frame structure, where does it come? Which layer will be handling about the frame structure? So it was a physical layer. Physical layer is in charge of this frame structure. So DECT has 24 time slots per frame. As you can see, the first block, 24 time slots per frame, 0 to 23 being marked, and each time slot, you can see the second block, which is the figure for each time slot. So you can see each time slot is around 480 bits, okay, which the 480 is being divided into 32, 388 and 60, where 32 bit preamble, that is a header, 388 bit, that is actual payload or the data, and you have the guard bits, 60 guard bits total. It makes it to 480 bits in one time slot. So 24 times in one frame, you have 24 time slots. Each time slot is 480 bits, and the payload, again, it's being shown. Payload is it contains 48 bits, 16 bits split into 48, 16, 320 and 4 parity bits. Now what is this 48 and 16? That is the 48 and 16, that is the header data bits and CRC error correction bits. 16 bits are error correction bits. Now in each time slot, 480 bits are allocated for 32 synchronization bits, 388 data bits and 60 bits for guard time, as I told you. So this is the frame structure of DECT. I hope it's clear. So let's move on to the DECT functional concept. Talking about the functional concept, the DCT subsystem is a microcellular or picocellular cordless telephone system that may be integrated with, or you can connect it to a private automatic branch exchange, PABX or PSTN. So it is a microcellular system which could be added up to the other systems, or it can go hand in hand with the other systems. So DEX system also always consists of the following. You have 5 functional entities. How about the functional entities of DECT? You have 5 entities, which are: one is portable handset. So you can see from the rightmost, you can start PH being marked, that is portable handset, that is a mobile handset on the terminal, and it could have some fax, or it is nothing but a mobile terminal where you have some message to be sent as fax or something. It's nothing but a mobile terminal which supports some services. Next is RFP. So this portable handset, as shown in the figure, it's communicating with what? RFP, right? So RFP stands for radio fixed part. So phone handset or portable handset is what I'm talking about. The phone, whatever you receive to say hello, that is handset, right? So that handset is portable. It is not connected to a wire. Okay, that is called portable handset, which is communicating wirelessly with the RFP, which is fixed. So the base of the handset, where you keep the handset, that is the base. So that is the RFP. RFP stands for radio fixed part. This supports the physical layer of the DCT common air interface. Now, every RFP covers one cell in a microcellular system, and the transmission between RFP and PH uses multi-carrier TDMA. So this PH and RFP communicates using TDMA technology. A full duplex operation is required there, right? That is, you can talk and you can hear the other person talk as well. So it's two-way communication happening. Next level you go, you can see CC being many RFCs are being connected to one CC. What is CC now? It's cordless controller or cluster controller. In two names it's known. One is cordless controller, or you can call it cluster controller. So this CC is CC. What does CC do? It handles the MAC, data link layer, and network layers for one or a cluster of RFPs, and it forms a central control unit for the DECT equipment. Like if you remember, I told you you have the base station, mobile station, base station, and MSC, PSTN, right? So there it was MSC which was a central part. Here, similar way, CC plays the central part in a DECT architecture. All right, the next one is network specific interface unit. That is not being shown here, but the call routing concept is what I'm talking about. This supports a call completion facility in a multi-handset environment. And you can see supplementary services being written and an arrow heading the CC, right? So this provides centralized authentication. So supplementary services include authentication and billing when DCT is used to provide telepoint services and mobility management as well. So this is about the DCT functional concept. You have the portable handset which is communicating wirelessly to RFP. You're using TDMA. RFPs are communicating to CC, which is cluster controller or cordless controller, and then from the CC to the PSTN. Calls are routed to the PSTN. And you also have call authentication and mobile management facilities provided by marked as supplementary services. So this is the functional. This is a figure which explains the functionality of DCT. Signal processing in DCT. Like we already discussed all the signal processing in the other technologies. So here in DCT, we have speech coding, channel coding, modulation, and antenna diversity. So analog speech is digitized into PCM, pulse code modulation, using 8 kilohertz sampling rate. That is what speech coding is. That is where analog, that is speech signal, analog in the analog form, is being digitized using PCM, pulse code modulation. And then in channel coding, what happens is for speech signals is no channel coding used, since DCT provides frequency hopping. Frequency hopping, I hope it's known to you. It's covered in the module 5, where the signal is being transmitted at different frequencies, and every time the signal keeps jumping from one frequency to the other or keeps hopping. That's why it's called frequency hopping. And frequency hopping is used. Channel coding and interleaving are avoided here because the DCT system is meant for use only in the indoor environments, that is very short range environments. So you need not do interleaving and ciphering and all that over here. Modulation. DCT uses a tightly filtered GMSK modulation technique, that is a minimum shift keying technique. It's a form of FSK where the phase transitions between two symbols are considered to be continuous. That is about the modulation GMSK. And then antenna diversity. Here in DCT, you have different antenna diversities possible, right? Polarization diversity, you have spatial diversity. So in DCT, spatial diversity is used at the RFP receiver and it's implemented using two antennas. So this is about the signal processing in DCT. I hope DCT concept is clear. We had discussed what is DCT, and we also looked at what are the functional the entities or the main keywords relating DCT, and also looked at the functional concepts and the speech, so the signal processing. Moving on to the next technology, which is push to talk. Push to talk is a means of instantaneous communication commonly employed in wireless cellular phone services. Now, push to talk, maybe you have not heard about this push to talk as such, but I'm sure all of you might have heard about walkie talkies, is it? You know what is a walkie talkie? Or you might have seen this the police control using this phone set. No, they say something, and then they press a button and they say, and they release the button, right? So something similar to a walkie talkie. The push to talk technology is an instantaneous communication system or a half duplex system. So when I say half duplex, both the users, two users who are trying to communicate, they cannot speak at the same time. One person has to listen when the other person has to speak, and the vice versa. The other person has to listen when this person is talking. So here a button is being used to communicate. So when a button is pressed, you're automatically connected and you can talk. And when you release the button, the connection is disconnected. Now, the operation of phones, as I told you, it is similar to walkie-talkie, and it is also referred to as P2T, push to talk, or P2T. Maybe I'll make it clear to you. It is P2T. So push to talk or P2T. Next is let's look at it in a more detailed way. So main example of push to talk would be police radios or air traffic controller, telecommunication system, or even some cellular technologies also employ push to talk. Okay. Now, while PTT systems have evolved to provide more capabilities, the benefit or the key benefit of PTTs remain the same. It provides highest efficiency of mobile voice communication, which is not available from any other communication tools. The caller can simply select a contact, press the PTT button, speak, and then release the button to get his voice message delivered instantly. That is why we call it instantaneous communication. There's no need to go through all this. There were a lot of procedures to establish a call, which we had discussed, right? That is first sending, checking if the channel is available, and then allocation of forward control, reverse control channels, forward voice channel. So all such processes are not required in push to talk because we are looking at an instantaneous communication in a short range. And PTT eliminates the typical all these ending protocols used in regular phone conversations as well. So PTT allows users to say no more than necessary, focus on getting the job done, and improve productivity accordingly. You cannot keep on blabbering on the phone using a PTT, whereas you can do that on the normal telephone, right? You can keep on talking for hours, but then not on PTT. PTT is just to convey your message in a very, very precise way, and just that your job is done. That's all. The PDT concept has been adopted by cellular system to offer a service known as push to talk over cellular, which allows end users to turn their cell phones into walkie talkie. That is also possible now. Push to talk phones can be turned on into a walkie talkie with a much wider range. And along with these functionalities, push to talk provides very tight security in terms of offering access to certain frequencies, which are considered to be very, very confidential. So it doesn't allow any unauthorized access of data. And it is instant connectivity. Talking about few features of PTT, one is security, another one is instant connectivity. As I told you, it provides instant conveying the messages very instantly. That is relatively quick and efficient. Third, on spot location. You can locate the other person where he is. Fourth, very clear or clarity. The messages are delivered clearly as well as acknowledged once the message has been received. Last is durability and reliability. You can rely on this PTT or push to talk system, and it's durable as well. That is, when I say durability, PTT radio devices can withstand different environmental conditions where the usage of cell phones may not be possible or ineffective. That is, it can cope up with different environmental conditions. So, that is it about the push to talk technology. Moving on to the last one, which is mobile IP or mobile Internet Protocol. Here in this technology, or this is a standard, internet standard. Okay, all these while we are discussing about how a call is being established, how is the data transmitted. So I'm talking about mobile IP or the server part. Okay, so it's an internet standard track protocol to accommodate mobility. Again, this is also the name itself, you can say mobile IP, right? We have heard about this IP, we know what is IP, you can connect it through an IP address and all that. But how about portable IP? So this mobile IP is a direct extension of the existing fixed or the wireline network. Now, the internet of today lacks mechanisms for the support of users traveling throughout the world. IP is a common base for thousands of applications and runs over dozens of different networks, is it? So that is the reason we are looking forward for a mobile IP where even the mobile users can access internet properly. If you say if a mobile computer or a mobile node moves to a new network while keeping its IP address changed. So when I say mobility, it's obvious that a mobile user is moving from one place to another, or one IP address to another IP address. Talking in technical terms, moving from one area or one IP address to a new location with a new IP address. So how is this going to happen? How are the routing procedures going to change accordingly is what we are going to discuss in mobile IP. Again, the functional entities or the terminologies which you need to know to discuss mobile IP. First one is a mobile node. That is, mobile node is nothing but in short MN. It is a host or router that changes its point of attachment from one network to the other. Let's say mobile node is the uh, considered to be the host, okay, which is moving from one network to the other. So the figure, if you can see, if you have a look at it, you have MN over here, right, marked in the foreign network. Yes. So I'll explain you what it is. This next functionality is home agent, HA. So home agent is the router on a mobile node home network. That is, presently we have a mobile node and this mobile node is connected to a network initially. So that forms the home network for that user. Let me say I am the MN or I am the mobile user, okay, and I have a home network with which I'm already connected to. So that is my home network. And the services offered in my home network is done by the home agent, okay. And you also have the third one is a foreign agent, FA. So foreign agent is some other new network to which I am moving to. So I am in my home network and I am moving to another network called foreign network, which is unknown to me. Yeah. So in the figure you can see you have a home network. So initially my MN was here, and then through the router, through the internet, it is moved to the new network that is the foreign network. Now MN is marked in the foreign network. You can see HA and FA being marked. These routers are nothing but home agent and foreign agent accordingly. Now, different phases of mobile IP. So there are different phases how this access or this process is taken through. Okay, three phases. The first one is agent recovery, second is the registration, and the third one is tunneling. So let me explain you each of these phases in detail. So agent recovery split into two: agent advertisement and agent solicitation. Before I go into the concept of mobile IP, let's keep it very simple so that you understand, okay? Suppose I am residing at a place A. Okay, my home is located at a place title A, and I am changing my uh, location, or I am relocating to a new place. Okay, so what happens when I'm relocating to a new place is I have an address which I have already informed the post office people, so that whenever I get some post or some letters, they directly come to my home and deliver it to me, right? So now what happens is I am shutting down. I'm not living in my home or in my home network anytime. I'm moving on to a new place. Okay, so what happens? My address changes. I'll no longer be able to receive any of the letters what I receive, right? So what happens is that letters will be sent back to the sender, and I will not be receiving any of the letters. Now what happens in that case? What do we do when you relocate to a new place? What is the step you take? You inform the home network. Yeah, you can inform the home network, say that I am relocating my home, and provide them the new address. That could be done. Yes. Otherwise, what could be the other possibility? I have relocated to another place, and maybe I can contact the post office in that area and inform them to kindly inform my home network that I have changed, and to route my letters or send all my letters to the new post office. That could be another option. So I have two options, right? One is going directly to the home network and changing my address. The other one is informing my new post office and telling them that I need to get all my letters to this post office. So please inform the home post office. A similar way here in transmission of packets. Okay, initially I was connected to my home network. I am a mobile user, so I am connected to a home network. Okay, and through a home agent, I'm connected to the home network. Now I'm changing my IP address. I'm moving to a new foreign network. Yeah, so where I need to have some new IP. Hmm? So once I receive my IP, what happens when there's some datagram or some data packets are being arriving? I need to inform the home network that I have changed my IP address and I'm now currently connected to my foreign or a new IP address, right? Something very similar to a letter or relocation of your house. You can explain this mobile IP. So the first step, as I told you, let me say a person CN. Let me go to the previous slide. You have CN being marked. CN is some other user. So let me say CN is trying to communicate with MN. Okay, let's say CN is you and MN is me. So you are trying to communicate with me, but I have changed my IP address. So what happens? Your letters or your information or your messages will not be delivered to me. Obvious, right? So what happens here is the whole role is to be played by me now because I have changed my IP address, right? So this mobile user, it has to find the new IP address. So what it does is there are two ways how this mobile user can actually find a new IP address. Okay, so two possibilities or two methods in which this user can get a new IP addresses. One is agent advertisement, the other one is agent solicitation. So, agent advertisement is where you agent advertisement where the home agent or the foreign agent, okay, the one who is providing service to us. So, the foreign agent and all the agents, both home and foreign, keeps on broadcasting the information saying that we are ready to serve you, we are ready to provide service to you. Okay, it keeps on broadcasting the message, saying very periodically. Okay, it's not random, it's periodically. It transmits the home agents or and the foreign agents both. They'll keep on transmitting the messages so that any new user or a node which has come in can easily identify the agent and get its IP address. That is one way of doing it. Okay, that is a home agent or the foreign agent. Foreign agent is broadcasting the message saying you can use our service. The other way around, there's other technology which is agent solicitation. So in agent solicitation, what happens is, let me say the mobile user, let me say I have moved to a new place, right? So I need to get an IP address, so I need to receive a message from any nearby agent, foreign agent, but I am not receiving any. Let me say I have not received any such broadcast message at all, right? If that happens, still I need an IP address to survive, right? So what I do is I'll start sending messages saying that I am here, please, I need your help, kind of requesting for an IP address. I am taking up the initiative, or the host or the host node is taking up the initiative to inform the uh, foreign agents or home agent, that to make them to tell them that I am present over here, please help me, right? So in that case, what happens is the agent will receive our information. So how am I transmitting the data? It is not simply telling help help. It is like I'll have message which contains the information about my home network, okay, and I'll be broadcasting. So someone receives it, let me say a foreign agent receives it, and then agent will have a register with it. So, okay, so my details will be checked in the register. They are the foreign agents register, and if they find it over there, they'll have separate two registers, the home location register and visitor location register. So they'll check my name in the home location register. If I'm there, okay, I am a home network agent, so no problem. But if I'm not there, then they'll check it in the visitors location register. If I'm there, okay, which means I've already registered. But if my name is not there both in HLR and VLR, not in home register or in visitors register, then it seems that I'm a new person, right? So the agent identifies that I am a new person, so I need service. So what it does is it updates its VLR with my name, and then it starts providing service to me. It accepts my request and starts providing service to me. But is the problem solved now? Is the home network aware of this? Not yet, right? With the foreign agent, okay, the I am registered to the foreign agent. That has happened. So the registration has happened, but is it registered to the home network that I'm not lost that and I'm found by another foreign agent? No. So what happens here? The foreign agent informs the home agent. How will the foreign agent know the details of a home agent? Because I am informed about my home agent, right? So I know my home agent. So I inform that to my foreign agent. So this foreign agent, using the details which I have provided, it will communicate to the home agent telling that this person is registered to the foreign agent. So what home agent does is it removes that not removing, it actually updates the detail that this person is no longer in my network and it has moved to the foreign network, and it registers the IP address of the foreign network in its VLR. Even the home agent will have a HLR and VLR, right? Even foreign agent will have HLR and VLR, that is registers. So once a foreign agent receives our information, it adds us, or it registers us, or it registers me to the foreign network. And the foreign network informs the home network that this person is registered under is under my custody. So what does the home network do? It updates the details saying, okay, this person is no longer at this address, the IP address has been changed, and it fills in the new IP address. Yes, so now it's okay, fine. So what happens when a data is being received? And one more point, this process of foreign agent informing the home agent, and the home agent sends an acknowledgement saying, okay, I have updated. Okay, that process, or the that way of communication, is known as tunneling. Okay, so agent recovery, that is getting the agent, registration is registering with the agent, also informing the home network, and tunneling is home network telling that I have updated the details of the user. Now you can see the figure as well here. You have a mobile node, it sends a registration request to the foreign agent. The foreign agent informs the home agent acknowledges it, and then it informs the mobile node that it has been informed to the home network. So this is the whole process of mobile IP. Okay, so now in that, suppose all these phases are being done. Okay, the actual working, let's move on to the working. So let me say I have done all these, I have moved to a foreign network and I have registered with it, and the home network is also informed about it. All three phases are being completed. Now what happens is, let me say that cn is trying to send some packets of data to mn. So what happens, cn will send a letter, or sorry, it sends a packet with which address? The previous IP address, because cn is not aware that mn has moved to a foreign network. right? So CN, without knowing that MN has moved to a foreign network, CN will send the data with the same old IP address. So what happens? This will be received by the home agent, right? So home agent has already updated that this person has moved away, and the new IP address is also registered, right? Or it's already filled up in the register. So home agent, what does it do? It will use this new IP address, okay, and along with the home agent in details, along with whatever the data they have received, they'll encapsulate the data with the new IP address. Okay, the initial data packet is there with the home network address or IP address, and on top of which the new IP address is encapsulated. That is the process is called as encapsulation. The encapsulated packet is being transmitted over the network, and what happens? The new IP address is that of the foreign agent, right? So this datagram or this data packet will be routed to the foreign network. Now the foreign network, on receiving this data packet, it decapsulates the data, and it finds out that, okay, this message belongs to MN, or the mobile node, and so foreign agent will deliver the data to the corresponding user. So this is how a mobile IP works. I hope it's clear to you. So let me just summarize three phases, that is agent recovery, registration, and tunneling, and then the data packets are transferred. Okay. So thank you for watching the video. We have covered three wireless technologies in this video, which is DECT, push to talk, and the mobile IP. This is the last video for module 6. I hope you enjoyed the video, and stay safe at home. See you soon. Have a very nice day. Thank you.